Okay, good morning, beautiful ladies. I am so excited to be here with you. I am loving these Tuesday Spotlight series, and this morning I have someone super fun to introduce you to. Her name is Cassie Carruthers. Welcome, Cassie.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So, you guys are going to be in for a treat because Cassie is amazing. We're going to be talking about creating your brand with a plan. And Cassie is a personal branding coach for female network marketers. She specializes in helping busy moms create their authentic brand and a plan for how they can get more leads, more sales, and momentum from social media. Just what we all want, right? So, Cassie, I would love to learn just a little bit more about the background. Like, how did you get into this? How did you get started as a personal branding coach?
Yeah, so I started out in corporate America, and I've always in my adult life been in sales and marketing. And I actually went to school, for business. And so I was working in corporate America, and I had a kid and kind of stayed in corporate America. And then by the time I had my second kid, I was thinking, wow, I want to be at home. This is something that I need to figure out a way that I can have more time with my family. And so I got into network marketing. And when I did, I realized that the way that people were being taught to market themselves and brand themselves was so different from the way I had been taught to traditionally market yourself. And I wanted to be able to help people. And I found that that calling, that need to serve was stronger than my need to be in network marketing. And so I gravitated toward the more of coaching and helping. And slowly it morphed into a career of helping elite network marketers be able to create a personal brand that was authentic. It wasn't sleazy or salesy.
Mhm.
And that's how I landed where I am today.
Oh my goodness, love that. And so now, just to take a step back, because what are some misconceptions, mistakes? I feel like when I started out, I didn't know what branding was. I was just like, I love these colors. This looks good together. Although, yeah, this was not my background at all. So, what do you feel like are some of the biggest misconceptions or mistakes that people make when creating their personal brand?
Well, the number one mistake that I see people making is thinking that a brand is really all about colors and logo and aesthetics and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I like to say your brand is you. It is the visual representation of you that you put out into the big world. And I am super passionate about making sure that that is authentic and
Mhm.
that it is service focused. And those are the big things for me is that we want to come from a place of service rather than rather than sales. And just focusing on making it as authentic and um, and and a whole picture of you and who you are rather than just focusing on the colors and the aesthetic part of it, which is fun. I love that part. That's what I do. But I love to build that foundation first so that we actually know who you are and who you can serve best before we start getting into creating pretty graphics.
Amen. Oh my gosh. And I love how you talk about authenticity. That's one of my core values. And yeah, I feel like we don't we know who we are, but it's hard to convey that. And that's what really makes a personal brand kind of stand out and be unique and draw people in. So so much more than just I thought it was branding and font or colors and fonts and my logo. I'm like, okay, done. But I love how you dig so much deeper. And so I know you have this really cool and very unique framework called the Brand with a Plan method, and that focuses on finding your authentic brand. So tell me more about that, and then and creating that. How, and then how does it help you when staying consistent on social media?
Yeah, so the framework kind of came about from years of working with clients, and I saw a pattern for how I was drawing out
Yeah.
the messaging and drawing out that authentic brand from people. And I started to come up with a framework for how I could help people consistently get those results in an exact. I hate to say plug and play because I
Mhm.
love for things to be really holistic and authentic, but it really can be a plug and play kind of system if you
Yeah.
have the right pieces and parts.
Yeah.
So the brand with a plan framework is really simple. It is the first step is knowing who you are. That's your
Mhm.
story. And you have to know your story and who you are before you can get to the next step, which is knowing who that you can best serve. And so that step is coming up with your ideal client and coming up with who you can best serve. And then the next step builds upon that, which is how are you going to speak to them? How are you going to get them to understand how you can help them?
Yes.
And then that step builds onto how are you going to show up. So that's the visual side of your brand. So
Okay.
in my framework, step 4 is the visual side of your brand, because
Yeah.
I want you to know who you are and who you can best serve and how you're going to speak to them before we start making the pretty graphics. And then the last step is your plan. That is
Mhm.
how you are going to, how and when, and what it's going to look like, and what your system is for showing up and being consistent and getting those leads into your funnel and then converting them into customers. And this system is a way that you can do that without feeling icky, without feeling like you are just selling. This system is very service focused,
Mm.
and taking and walking clients through this process, I've realized that that you can really show up every day, be exactly who you are, and get to serve the people who I believe that God called you to serve if you
Yep.
do this process correctly.
Oh my goodness. Amazing. And we all want and need help in that. Just calling or answering the call that God has for us. I love that you really help people walk that out. So, do you have any tips then for creating a really authentic personal brand?
Yes. So if you didn't get anything else from the framework, what I would say is to sit and meditate on your story. Look back at the pieces, the things that you've walked through, the trials, those big pivots, and those big points in your life where things have changed. And then thinking about, gosh, knowing that about myself, how can I serve others? And then how can I turn that into my business? That I get to show up every day and serve people. And if you start from that place of putting, of really doing that soul searching, really looking into your story and asking yourself, how can I serve? Then
Mhm.
beautiful things are going to come out of that. The fruit is going to be really good. And so that is my number one tip. And I think it's often overlooked. People forget to look at their story, they start thinking about their clients, which is important. But I love for your story to be able to be woven into your marketing so seamlessly. And starting with your story is going to be the key to making that happen.
Mm, absolutely right. Because, yeah, God made us exactly who we are. There's no one else like us without, just He made us perfect. And we have to own every aspect of that. So that is huge. And I love how you just said, how can I serve? And let that be your focus. Because again, I think, yeah, the words that you're using, they just resonate with me. And I know my audience as well. We don't want to be icky. We don't want to be salesy. But when we're just like reframing it, how can I serve? That is such a beautiful way. So thank you for sharing that nugget. Um,
Absolutely. And one other thing that I wanted to say is that when you're going through this process and you start to feel some of those feelings coming up of, oh my goodness, can I even do this? Should I
yeah.
even be doing this? Is this even proper for me to be doing? As a Christian woman, I always turn it back to service. I always turn it back to that, you know, the transformation. I think one of our friends says this: transformation happens after the transaction. So there has to be a transaction in order for our clients who have real problems. Their business could be completely on fire, or their life could be completely a mess, and we have something that we can help them with. And and like our good friend Rachel says, that the transformation can only happen after a transaction. And so that's something that really helps me, is to kind of think about that when I'm coming up with my offerings, when I'm doing something new, or even when I'm just going on social media, just kind of setting that intention that that sales aren't necessarily bad, that some of the biggest transformations that I've had in my life have come from me purchasing a program or a product.
Yep. Amen. Right. Um, two of the questions that I always love to ask during these interviews is, what have you learned about God during this journey of saying yes to, I mean, I don't know if you've always thought that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, but like, what was that like? What was, you know, the starting point? Because I know a lot of women in here are maybe there where they're feeling called, they're feeling stirred, and yet there's a lot of fears coming up. What have you learned about both yourself and of God through being on this journey of entrepreneurship?
Well, it may sound a little cheesy, but I've learned to just let go and let God,
Ah,
and that ministry happens in all kinds of forms. I had in my mind as a child that I thought that ministry was going to be, I was going to be going to a foreign country, and I was going to be, a missionary, or I was going to be standing up in front of a congregation saying my testimony. But for me, ministry happens in the everyday moments with women. It happens when I connect with beautiful people like you, when I can help someone who is struggling to see how God fits into their business or into their life. And it happens every day in the little moments that, as an entrepreneur, as being able to be at home and work from home,
yeah.
that I get to have in my most important ministry, which I believe is motherhood.
Yep.
And so that's what my walk has taught me, and what this journey through entrepreneurship has taught me. I don't know if that quite answered your question, but those are my biggest takeaways as of right now from
Mhm.
my entrepreneurial journey as a Christian woman.
I love that. That's so good. And you're right. I grew up very similarly, never thought I'd be called into anything like this, but yeah, definitely ministry happens here and business happens here, and it's so beautiful when we can take those two and mesh them together and just know that yeah, the minute, we can still be ministering to people outside of the church walls, um and in our homes, like you said. I know you have three young boys, and are really involved with them, but this allows for you to have it all, kind of. So
It really does. It does. And every day I am just so thankful that, I had the faith to listen to that little voice that was telling me that I needed to be at home, that I needed to focus on my family. And not to say that that's not other people's story, and that corporate America can't be a beautiful place full of, ministry and happy families. But for me, listening to that quiet little voice that said that I needed to be at home, and taking a leap of faith, quitting my job, and stepping into something new. That was one of the best. I don't want to say decisions, but one of the best ways that I've ever followed God's leading. That was, and it came to a very fruitful place.
mhm, mhm, amen, so good. um And so, Cassie, I want you to share again how people, not again, for the first time, like how can people get in touch with you? I have a couple links. Cassie does amazing work, you guys. I've seen it firsthand. I can vouch for the beauty, and not only just visually, but just you can tell how she is as a person. Like she is beautiful inside and out to work with. And I just am so excited to share her with our community. But how can people stay in touch with you? How can they find you? How can they learn more about you and what you're doing?
Absolutely. So, I hang out mostly on Instagram.
Mhm.
So you can find me, it's at Cassie Carruthers, just at CassiCarrothers. That's me. And that's where you'll find all kinds of fun tidbits about branding, my wild children, and all the good things like that. You can go to my website, which is CassieCarruthers.com. But I think Kari has a couple of links to my portfolio and to get on the wait list for my Brand with a Plan program. It is currently not open, but it will be in mid-August once everybody's kiddos get back in school and we can all take a deep breath. I would love to share some time with you guys and really dive into the Brand with a Plan method if that's something that you guys are interested in. But all the free goods are over on my Instagram, and that's where I really love to hang out.
Amazing. Okay. So I will be putting all the links. And thank you, Katie. Gosh, she's just the best. She is like on top of it as far as sharing platforms and links and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Katie, for putting that in there. And go check her out. Get on the wait list. It's going to be good. And August is going to be here before you know it. So don't wait on this. Um, Cassie, it has been such a pleasure. Is there anything else that you would love to share with our audience?
I think we've really covered it. And I just want to thank you so much for having me today. I love this community, and you have converted me to enjoying Facebook groups again. It was never particularly my thing, but
Yeah.
I see a lot of good things going on in this group. And I want to thank you for having me today and for inviting me into your special group. And I can't wait to get to know some of you a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I that that's all I got.
Aw. Yay, Carrie the converter. No, I'm happy to convert. Yeah. And we all have different platforms. I was just on a conversation, we have to honor who God made us to be, how he made us to be. Do we like to, I like to connect more so with people doing this, going deep. Like, let's have a conversation. Let's dig in. I would rather cry with someone than like talk about the weather. But yeah, we all have a
Same.
um, but I am so happy that that God connected us. I'm so trusting of him, and the divine connections that he makes here is just such a beautiful thing. But yeah, you being a prime example. I don't even remember how we fully connected, but I know it was on Facebook because not really on Instagram either. So
Yes, and I'm so glad we got connected. It was on Facebook, and
mhm,
somehow we got connected. And one day you put some information out about these Tuesdays, and that's how I got in your group. And I started really just loving what you were doing here.
yeah. And that was just such a divine thing too. So God was just like, "Hey, Carrie, you should do this." I was like, "Okay."
I
But
love.
anyways, yeah, thank you again, Cassie. So lovely. Thank you for sharing with our community. So definitely go check out her links, connect with her on Instagram, and yeah, you're just gonna love her. So, all right, everyone, have a beautiful day. We'll see you next Tuesday again for our next interview, but then also put on your calendar next Tuesday night is the first Tuesday in August. So don't forget, we always have our prayer and prophetic evening with Vanessa Chavez. These are so powerful. If you have not come yet in person, please come so you can get a word from her. And we cry together, we laugh together. It's just very, very powerful. We get to know each other, And so put that on your calendar, and then I'll see you next Tuesday for the next spotlight interview. But until then, love you guys. Have a beautiful week. Bye.